had a little situation where a customer sold a car, and during their auction and stuff at selling the car, they had an issue with the doors. They couldn't get the doors back open. And so we went over to the house where the car was, and were able to get the doors open. But what we found is the striker studs were actually broke. And you can see here, this was on the driver's door. It broke. And here's the passenger side, and it's actually split, getting ready to break. But years ago, when this car was originally built or started by the owner, the latches that they used, instead of using a traditional bear claw type latch, they used an OEM style latch that needed a smaller striker. So the striker they started with is made by Carolina Custom Hot Rod Parts, and it's stainless steel. It's got a set screw Loctited in it, but they turned around and they turned the diameter down, and you can see the difference in the diameter to work with the latch that they used. So to help the car get done and where it can be delivered, we're going to have to actually do the same thing that they did, but we're going to go about 5 thousandths larger in size to give it a little extra meat. And just over time, this car was built 15 plus years ago, so it's lasted 15 years. But we're going to make the new owner of the car aware of what's going on, and if it happens again, they're going to have to change the latches to where they can go to a larger striker stud. So that's what we're actually doing right now in the lathe, and you can see here where the other ones broke. So we're going to take the new ones, turn them down to the, let's go 5 thousandths larger in diameter, Kenny, on those. And so Kenny's working on that right now. And then let's go up here and we'll look at the culprit that caused the whole beginning of this problem was the suicide door pins. So let's go up here. So part of the culprit of the doors not opening were the safety. This car has suicide doors. It's a 36 Chevy. And over time, somebody has left the pins out, shut the door, or tried shutting the door, and they bent them a little bit, probably tried to straighten it. Then over time it's been bent. And this time they just got bent to the point that you can't even do them manually. And the electric solenoid wasn't operating it anymore. So this style is not available with the electric screw motor on it anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this apart and straighten the pin. And like I said, this car was built about 15, 18 years ago. So we're going to clearance all this and lube it with some graphite and get it back working. And then we'll take it back over to the house, to the customer's house, and put it all back together and make sure it works so that they can deliver the car to the new owner. So that's what we're going to do now, start pulling this apart and see what we can find. Worst case scenario is we just put a set of the manual ones on it and do away with the solenoid. If we can't free it up enough, the solenoid still works. So they got a cotter pin. We can't get the pin to slide in and out. It's bound up from being bent. And that's leaving it out and then shutting the doors on these suicide doors. They bent it over the years, and finally it was just bent too much. Now it's in a bind. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull this cotter pin out. We'll try to save it. And now we can get that off. See, it's bound up. We can't move it by hand. So we'll knock it out here. And you can see that it's bent. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but as I spin it, it's bent. So now we're going to go straighten this up with a hammer and a vise, and then I'm going to run the belt sander around it and take it down in diameter just a little bit. Let's see if our pin slides freely on a dry assembly, or if we need to go do some more grinding. So right now, that's actually pretty free. So we're back here to the customer's house, and we're going to install these strikers right quick. And luckily the paint, they've been on here for so long, the paint's indented. So we're just going to line them back up with that, and that we should be pretty good on that. or we will check fit it first before we move on. But we're going to put the striker studs back in. So we got over here, so we had the broken latch studs, striker studs. And the reason they broke was they had to turn them down years ago to fit the style of latch they used. And they really just turned them down too much, and over time they broke. This one broke completely off, this was cracked, getting ready to break. So I had Kenny to turn them down, but to give me an extra 5 thousandths or so, maybe 10 in clearance, and I don't know how much he gave me, but they're not going into our latch in the latch position, they're just a little bit too big. And what's going on here, the reason the car's being worked on is the original owners passed away, unfortunately, a good friend of ours, good customer years back. And they put the car up in an auction, and the auction's over, the car's sold, but the problem with the doors, so we're fixing it. So they have some of the tools of the Gary's still laying around, so we took the liberty of grabbing a couple tools, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the cavity for the striker stud just a little bit in the latch to save from having to drive all the way back to the shop, try turning it down to the point that it's fragile, and then come back and have to go 2 or 3 times to get it right. So I'm going to use a die grinder, kind of clean that hole up a little bit, come back with a stone and clean it up, and then we'll check fit it, and once we get it to go in and out of the latch, then we can put it in the jam and keep going. So this is kind of where we are. I'm going to put a light right there so I can see what I'm doing. And it's called improvisation. What is it called?
Improvising.
Improvising. Improv, like acting, improv. So we're definitely not acting, and it's about 1,000,000 degrees in this garage. So anyway, so we're going to hopefully get it done here in a few minutes. Are you zooming? So what I did is, when this would latch up around the striker stud, this cavity was technically too small. It was designed for a real small stud in its original OEM application. So this latch was probably like for a trunk or a minivan side door or something like that. And we allowed a little bit more thickness on these. So I rummaged through some of the equipment that was here at the estate sale, found some items, and I've been able to grind this hole out a little bit bigger, the latch, so that we can get it in there. And so now it actually goes into its safety catch, and we got some play, which is what we want, to allow for adjustment or whatever. So I'm going to put it all together, see if it'll latch and hold, and if it latches and holds, we'll assemble this side and then move to the other side.